think I have to switch. Okay. So if anybody has any questions throughout this, I'm not really going to make use of the chat screen. So just unmic yourself, okay? Or no, I'm sorry, unmic yourself. Unmute yourself and let me know if you have a question. I don't take it as any kind of rudeness to just interrupt mid-presentation or anything like that. That is fine. Just let me know if you do have a question. My chat on this computer is so small, I doubt I'll even see it if it pops up. All right, since we have, Letitia and Sophia here, I just want to make sure I'm right on the dates. If you are interested in 3-minute thesis, what we're asking you to do is fill out an application, and I think the application deadline is February 14th. Nice Valentine's Day, is that correct?
It's the 15th.
Oh, okay.
The day after Valentine's Day.
You put it one day back. Okay, good. And then the actual event will occur on April 17th. Or sorry, April 7th. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. And there's some other deadlines before those, but I think we will be sending out information after we know who's involved. That sound good? That's okay. So the 3-minute thesis, this video is really to help you kind of prepare for 3-minute thesis and kind of understand what it is and what you're doing. And I have a little kind of anatomy of what a 3MT talk looks like, and just to help you kind of get ready and prepare for these things. I think you'll find it's one of the more rewarding things that you do. I know when you think perhaps of a 3-minute presentation, I think some people just kind of go, oh, that will be really easy to do. And what you find is that it's much more difficult than you might think, okay? But it's not terribly taxing either. But it's kind of like writing a new creative song or something, because you're going to perform it. You need to rehearse until you have it down. But to really get the art form down, and that's what it's all about, is you need to make sure, if you want, certain goals are met in terms of the structure of that, that talk. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started. First of all, what is this thing? Okay, so the 3-minute thesis is an academic research communication competition developed by the University of Queensland in Australia, which is kind of impressive. I wish they had a competition in the US where the winner gets to go to Australia, but we're not quite there yet. But Texas A&M University is one university along with over 100 other universities across the country that is holding these 3MT competitions. And we did our first one during the 2015-2016 year that had separate competitions for doctoral master's students at the time. But starting in the fall of 2018, we decided to hold 3MT competitions in both fall and spring, but I should kind of update this. So this year, we're just having this one competition in the springtime, okay? That'll include both master's and doctoral students together, and both compete against one another. Some students have kind of questioned that, I think, in the past, going, oh, would someone have more of an advantage over the other? And I'm not sure who has the real advantage there, okay? The doctoral folks have these dissertations they spend a little more time with, right? They may have more data to present. They may know their topic, I don't know, maybe a little more, who knows? But the thesis students also don't have to reduce perhaps as much. And technically, I think a lot of times they almost have the advantage in these competitions. You could look at it from that because of the amount of material that they're presenting might be a little less than those in the doctoral. Either way, the competition is always about kind of taking what you have and packing it in, right, to this little time period of 3 minutes. So yeah, I can see already I'm going to have to redo this slide. I didn't notice that before. So the concept, 3-minute thesis, right, developed in Queensland. The premise of the competition is develop academic, presentation, research, communication skills, supports the development of the students' capacities to effectively explain their research in a language appropriate to an intelligent but non-specialist audience. And graduate students have 3 minutes to present compelling orations on their dissertation or thesis topics. It's not an exercise at all in watering down research, but really forces the students to consolidate those ideas and really concisely explain that the research discoveries they have, once again, in that language of a non-specialist audience, okay, which is kind of the trick, right? So who's eligible for this? Both doctor and master's students. So doctoral students currently enrolled at TAMU-CC and actively engaged in dissertation research are eligible. Graduates of TAMU-CC and previous winners are not eligible to participate. So if you did win before, can't do it. Competitive candidate should have a well-conceived dissertation project, compelling data collected, and a novel story to share. Master students must be actively engaged in thesis research. And once again, graduates of TAMU-CC and previous winners of 3MT are not eligible. A competitive candidate should have a well-conceived research project, compelling data collected, and of course, a novel story to share. Right? You don't have to have defended your thesis or dissertation to do this. You just have to have enough data collected so you can actually draw some conclusions. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. So I'm a first year PhD student, and I haven't collected any data yet, but I have like a proposal that I'm doing this summer in Hawaii. So are you saying that I should not compete because I don't have any data?
Okay. Yeah, since you don't have any data, now we might run this by the dean in college graduate studies to see, is it something she wanted to open up. But typically these people are reporting on findings that they have collected, because the winner of these things will go on. I don't know if there's any way they could be talked into having that person do that, and not be eligible for prizes, which I don't think you really want anyway to have happen.
True.
But at one time I was making the calls on those. This is up to College of Graduate Studies. So if Letitia and Sophia are there, what do you guys think?
I think it was Alex who was speaking. Alex, if you want to send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat, I'd be happy to talk to Dr. McCaleb, the Dean of the College of Graduate Studies, just to run it by her so we can give you a more definite answer, if that would help you out.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you an email. I know that, I've done one of these at a previous university, not one, but done similar things. And I know my advisor was encouraging me and the 2 other master's students in our lab to do it just to practice public speaking, but none of us were all in our first year. She's a new professor here, so we don't have data yet, but I'll email you and then maybe we can talk about it further.
Yeah, absolutely. I just put my email in the chat. So whenever you get a chance, probably the sooner the better since the application deadline is approaching. But just shoot me an email. I'm happy to run that by her.
Okay, thanks so much, Sophia.
Sure, no problem.
But just to be clear, I mean, if you do have some data collected, talk to your mentor. I mean, is it enough to actually draw some kind of conclusions about, the project? Typically, that is the level you have to be at to compete. Because I think when you get to, like I said, the winner of this would go on to regionals. And there, I know that's the case. You have to have data collected where you can draw those conclusions. Okay.
I'm sorry, I also
yes.
have a question.
Yes.
Yes, so I am also a second year doctoral student in the College of Engineering. from the Geospatial Computer Science program.
Great.
And I too also have a similar problem. I'm in the second year, so I have a well-conceived topic and I have a very good idea. I have my prospectus and everything. But since my topic deals with the design of a model, I also don't have any a lot of data to show right now. Eventually, in the future, I may have some, but right now, not too much to show.
Okay, so it's really a
As far as
call
the
between
data
you and the mentor, I think, whether or not they feel you're going to have that by the time, because once again, the date of the presentation would be April 7th, and the question is, would you have enough data before that time? Okay, so I don't know if your plans are to be collecting this now and you've started data collection, and it's possible that you might have that data by the end of March or something. So the best call on that is really your mentor.
Think about it. Okay, sure.
Okay. Let's see. As far as going through the rules, these 3MTs, you're allowed a single static PowerPoint slide. It can't do any fancy stuff, so there's no slide transitions, animations, movement, or any description allowed. The slide is to be printed from the presented by the from the beginning of the oration. No additional electronic media, so you can have sound or video are permitted. No additional props, so you can't wear costumes, play musical instruments, bring in laboratory equipment, any of this that are permitted. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes maximum, and the competitors exceeding 3 minutes are disqualified. Now, at the end of that 3 minutes, if you are just thanking the judges, and the timer goes off and go, I want to thank the audience for listening or something like this, obviously you're not going to be disqualified for something like that. The presentations are to be spoken word, so you can't do poems, start rapping up there, okay, or break into song. The presentation should commence from the stage. Presentations are considered to, of course, started or commenced when a presenter starts their presentation through movement or speech. And just remember, the decision of the judging panel is final. Okay. Any questions about those? All right. Okay.
So right now with the pandemic going on, is it still going to be like in a room with people in there?
I think we'll be playing it by call. Obviously, there's not going to be a huge full audience in there, and I think what we're going to be doing is deciding on who can be in there. Okay. Do you guys have any final rules?
So I think right now, tentatively, we have space reserved to hold it in person. However, we will have to wait for events to unfold, and as time gets closer, we may have to change or adjust what our 3MT competition might look like. So right now, we are very hopeful that we may be able to hold it in a smaller setting. But as we get closer, we'll know a little bit more about how that's going to work.
Okay.
All right. Judging criteria. Now, this is one part that I did update because this is actually what the judges are going to see. Okay. This is what they're using to judge these talks. So just note, these are the actual things the judges have in front of them. Okay. So there's really 3 areas they're going to be judging. One of them is communication, and they're going to be rating all the talks on hey, was the thesis topic and its significance communicated in a language appropriate to an intelligent but non-specialist audience? Okay. For comprehension, they're asked, did the presentation help the audience understand the research? And engagement, did the oration make the audience want to know more, right? So was that audience riveted, okay, to what the person had to say? Any questions with those? Okay, but I wanted to make sure you had the exact questions that the judges have in front of them, and those are the 3. Okay, so I wanted to make sure you had an example of a good talk, so I went through and combed through some of these things. This is one that probably has just about the most hits out of 3MT talks. So I wanted to play this real quick. Only takes 3 minutes, but she does a really good job. As you watch this, really pay attention to how she starts her talk, introduce, and I should say from there, really make talks in terms of real life as she goes through this, introduces the research question, the language that she uses to describe her methodology, and how she ends up kind of ending the talk as well. I'm going to show you 2 talks tonight, and this is the first.
Our third finalist is Emily Johnson from the School of Pharmacy and Medical Sciences. The speaker research guided by antibodies and platelets.
What happened? Sorry, I lost it here.
Australia to study the deadliest animal in the world. Now, there may be some Australian audience members thinking, Bruce, science is finally recognizing what was at the drop bears. But I'm not studying drop bears, because around the world, by transmitting diseases like malaria and dengue fever, mosquitoes kill more than 1 million people every year, making them the deadliest animal on the planet. Now, in Australia, the most common mosquito-borne disease is Ross River virus, and it occurs at high rates in some areas, but not others. My question is why? What is it about certain areas that makes them breed disease? If we can understand the environmental factors that contribute to disease transmission, then we can alter the environment or target our control efforts to prevent human infections. But to answer that question, I had to find out where the infected mosquitoes were in South Australia. And traditionally, testing mosquitoes for virus has always been difficult. So I used a new technique. It takes these cards, which are embedded with virus-preserving chemicals, and coats them in honey. Mosquitoes will come to feed on the honey and in the process spit virus onto the card where it can later be detected. Now, no one had ever used this technique in a broad-scale virus survey before, so I had to adapt it. I developed new traps and set them at over 100 field sites across South Australia. And I captured over 20,000 hungry mosquitoes and let them feed on the card for a week before testing the cards for a virus. Now, you may not think that these traps were very impressive, but science doesn't have to be beautiful. It has to be effective. And these traps are proving to be our most sensitive method of detecting infected mosquitoes. I found 3 types of infection: Ross River virus, Farmer Forest virus, and Stratford virus, which has never before been found in South Australia. I now have the virus data I need to conduct my analysis, and I'm collecting publicly available data about the environment surrounding my traps, like the density of human housing, the biodiversity of mammals, and the ratio of green space to buildings, to see if any of those environmental factors can link these virus hotspots that I've shown here. But the most exciting part of my research so far has been the success of this method. Public health officials in Victoria, Queensland, and Western Australia have been in contact with us about implementing this technique for their surveillance next year. And I developed these traps on a tight budget. I used recycled milk cartons, pantyhose, and paper clips to make the traps. Each trap costs less than $1 and can be reused for the whole season. That was important to me because the majority of mosquito-borne disease risk happens in economically impoverished countries. In India, for example, where about a quarter of the population lives on $1 a day, there are 33 million cases of dengue infection every year. With my low-budget virus surveillance and spatial analysis method, I can help any country, regardless of resources, find out where their deadliest animals occur, why they're there, and how we can stop them from infecting humans. Thanks.
Let me launch this thing again. Sorry about that. Okay. But yeah, to get you started, just to give you kind of a rough format of what these talks look like, I think this one does a great job. It's taking an idea that actually, if she was at doing a job talk or something, would be much, much more detailed. It would be using all sorts of academic jargon that's in there. And Emily's done a great job in terms of stripping that information away and replacing it with stuff that people can easily understand. Now, probably one of the most valuable things of these is that if she does go out on a job and she talks to people that aren't necessarily in her field, and people ask her what she does or what her dissertation was about, you can imagine the smile on her face that would be there to just launch into this 3MT. So it really advantages the people that are going out to get jobs to have this 3MT, especially if it's your thesis or dissertation, under your belt and kind of ready to go. It makes it much easier to talk to people in a way that they really enjoy. All right, so moving on. The title of the 3MT talk, I didn't want to kind of avoid that because it's really important to take in consideration, once again, who is your audience? Because my guess is you have a title for your dissertation or a title for your thesis, which is pretty sophisticated, and it probably is loaded with some, if you want, jargon, academic language, perhaps. So make sure for your talk that you use a title that appeals to a non-specialist audience. Okay? For instance, instead of a topic like, or a title like Action Identification Theory as an Explanation for Social Performance Effects Using I should say, this should be an A, nice misspelling, a semantic coding task. And this title right here was actually the title I had for my thesis or dissertation way back when. And if I was going to do a 3MT, it might look more like this, okay? Which kind of illustrates perhaps some of the results that you got in there, but much simpler for people to understand. So something like choking under the pressure of the public eye, where, I know a little bit more of what this is out. So obviously there were performance problems, a person choked, and it happened whenever there were an audience of some kind watching these people. So, which is in a nutshell kind of what that was all about. But watch your titles, because you do not want to have them loaded with all these academic things. I think this is something that a lot of people have done in the past, doing their 3MTs, and at the very last minute, they change their title over because they want it to read in non-specialist terms. So it's better to kind of do that. I know some people have conferences they go to. I know I go to one almost every year, the Society of Personality and Social Psych. We're almost trained to kind of start your titles of things with a phrase like this and then a more technical one after that. Okay, I would just encourage you to kind of grab that first part of that. Okay, make sure it does describe your talk though. Okay, so we're going to move on. I'm going to look at designing the 3MT talk and how these things look. So they generally have 3 components, but I'm going to divide these things into 6. Not to get too confusing, but I just want to get a little more detail in there. So the talks generally do 3 things. You should be describing why you're doing what you're doing. In this first segment, you'll have what we'll call the hook to grab people's attention. You'll spend a lot of time describing the problem that you're dealing with, and kind of in that section with a real clear statement of what your research question is all about. What exactly is it that you're trying to answer? Okay. Naturally, kind of following from that would be kind of the approach or method that you are using to answer that question. So you're going to describe how you're doing it. Once again, really important to speak in a language of the non-specialist. Okay. And then at the end, after you're there, you're going to talk about the results, right? So how it relates to the real world. So no one wants to hear about your statistics so much as they do just verbal descriptions of those findings and what they mean. So you got the discovery, and I have the big picture there because that's how you're going to end up You want to end up with relating this back to where you almost started with the hook, right? Something called circular writing, which is really kind of more of an art form, but you want to leave them with why this has high utility and why it's important and why other people, right, should care about this. Okay. Questions about that? All right, let's look at each part. And then when you go back to start looking at some of these talks, I think it's really important to, and you'll look, I mean, you can look at dozens upon dozens and just look for these different elements in them and see how they did them. Because even though I can outline these, there's still probably a million variations on how you could accomplish these different tasks. So let's talk about the hook first. Of course, you want to grab the audience right from the start, their attention, by starting with, something that almost everyone's interested in, right? To hook them into your presentation, okay? Make sure you take a look at other 3MT winning presentations on the internet and explore, a wide range of hooks that other people have used effectively. If you don't have one in mind, it's a great way to get examples. So the idea is to build a bridge between the everyday experience of your audience and the more academic material that you're going to present. So some of the common beginnings of these talks, and like I said, this is not anything mutually exclusive. There's a ton of these, but a lot of people begin with telling stories. So, a lot of talks begin with these exact words. What if I told you that, right? Exercise is really no good for you. If you can tell them something that really is against what they believe, that would be wonderful. And you plan to show that too, but imagine this is another phrase where you actually try to put the audience, in the setting that you're talking about, okay? So you could have them and they get more involved, right? And the idea is you want to get them hooked, right? The idea. So once we get that, you want to leap into the problem and talk about, what is the problem you're dealing with? Why was this research necessary, right, to begin with? So after hooking the audience, you describe the problem. So note that this is not the research question, but really is the big picture basis for it, right? So you're really talking about real world stuff, right? And why we need the research that you are conducting. It's important to convey that problem that the problem is important, and you really do so by using real world terms. Okay? If the audience can't relate to that, they're not going to really see the importance of anything. They'd have to take your word for it because they get lost in the academic jargon of things. So you don't want that to happen. But more specifically, why should this thing be important to the audience? Why should they care? Be sure to avoid that use of jargon. Okay? Any questions about the problem? Okay. These are pretty easy sections to write, I think, because, once again, it's like we're so used to academic language that's kind of the actual challenge of everything is keeping that from entering into what you write about. Next comes your research question. And for this, they understand your problem now and its importance. So it's time to tell them where you come in. And a lot of times you'll find that people actually say those words in their talk, and they will actually say, this is where I come in. And then they start talking about their methodology or their question, and then your methodology. So what question are you trying to answer through the work? Be sure that you state that in a way that's understandable to the audience again. This will likely be a very short piece of your presentation, right? Might just be one sentence, but it's really critical. And you want it to kind of stand out because it marks the transition between the problem and the approach. A clearly stated research question, of course, makes your presentation much easier to follow for the audience. Okay, so make sure that question really kind of stands out. The approach, of course, is your methodology stuff. And right, a lot of people have methodology that includes all sorts of equipment and this kind of stuff that people can really get lost in. So make use of metaphors all you can. Try to put things, once again, in that language. So the audience is begging to hear how you chose to answer the question. Okay, at least you hope they're begging, right? And time permitting, why you chose that approach. So don't forget who you're talking to. Keep the description as simple as possible. If your methods were overly complicated, right, you may want to use the visual slide to help convey that. We'll talk about slides in a little bit, but for people that really have kind of complexity built into methodology, and need a little help getting through that section, don't forget you have the slide there, so you can make use of a visual up there to do it. Okay, but we'll talk about, you don't want to use a lot of words though. Okay, if you find you must use terminology or concepts the audience is unfamiliar with, make sure that you clearly explain those in advance of using them. Okay, after hearing your approach, the audience should be able to foresee kind of possible outcomes of your investigation because they totally understand what you were trying to do and how you were doing it. Okay. Then there's a section, right? This is why we want you to have data, because you need to be presenting kind of a discovery. What did you find, right? How did this question work? Now, you can imagine that for some folks, you found exactly what you're looking for, so you can be super excited, okay, and talk about these things. But you might also not find anything is possible. Still, we'd love you to present. And let's talk about that too. So you won't have time to tell them all the details. You really just stick to major findings, which should include the most interesting things that's there. When you consider a result interesting, make sure you explain why it's interesting to you. And once again, in real world terms, right? Be excited about this section so your passion should really peak with discoveries. Now, if things didn't work out for you, right, and the data didn't support your hypotheses you were making, right, there's nothing wrong with being very disappointed and showing this as you talk about this. Still, it's just all part of research. When you do research, it's like batting averages. If you're batting about 300, at least in psychology, I know you're doing great. Okay, there's only about 1 out of 3 things actually work out the way you want them to. So make sure this is a part that really are kind of showing a deep kind of passion and excitement for the findings you have. Or, like I said, disappointment if you didn't. Or you might be excited about the next try. The last part, right? You made it to the final stretch, right? So bring your talk full circle by returning to the big picture problem you started with. Once again, circular writing. If you can somehow relate this back to the hook, man, you are golden. But then tell the audience in real life terms, right, how the research is useful, and end with a grand statement of how your research or research agenda may or will change the world, okay, which sounds like a super huge dramatic statement here, but that's kind of what you're trying to do, right? You're selling people on your product here, okay, your work. So strive to make your last words impactful by slowing them down, okay? So those last things you say are the most important in the talk, and deliver them nice and slow if you can for that dramatic ending. I'm going to show you a second talk, and it's probably, to me, it's the best talk, in my opinion, that I've seen in 3MT. And just because the person really obeys kind of those rules. Okay, before we get to that, let's talk about the slide. Okay, some rules with the slide. Keep in mind, you don't want it to distract from people listening to what you have to say, so keep things simple. Don't pack a bunch of stuff onto that little PowerPoint slide. minimize the text, right? Simple graphics or images are really the way to go. Okay, rather than talking, if you have some kind of metaphor, you might use something like a tree image and something's down there in the roots and something's out in the leaves, whatever, if it makes sense to do so for your project. The slide, of course, should capture attention and really be memorable, right? And that's kind of the key to all these things, is making sure you have kind of this memorable slide that the judges will remember. But of course, they need to tie it to your talk, so it should have purpose. Right? The slide should clearly relate to your talk. Like I said, whether it's metaphorical or conceptual, make sure it relates. And to give you an example, I have a little link here. Hopefully I won't screw this up this time. Okay. Here's one that actually is the University of Australia puts off. This is an example of what not to do. Okay. So if you look at this one, keep in mind the slide does not have to have your title. It doesn't have to have the like TAMU CC. It doesn't have to have your name and where you're from, what program you're in, right? Don't have to have this 3MT over here. Now, if you have a title on there, right, if you notice this one, why having a really long or complex title is not a good idea, and the reasons why you should stick with something short, sharp, funny, and memorable, okay? There. As far as charts go, right, I think figures talk more than words. So when you have a lot of text with a lot of numbers, people don't generally do well with a lot of percentages. Okay, so try to minimize text when you're there. You know, I'm not sure why this picture is here. I suppose it would be memorable. Okay, but people might actually look away. Okay, from whatever this is. And you may have multiple charts on there, up to you, but more words, so many words. Did you know a typical thesis is around 80,000 words? Wow, that's a lot of words. Okay, so be aware, you just don't want to pack it full here, because this would take 3 minutes for people to decipher what's on your slide. It should be used more simply. Now, once again, if you have a methodology that's more complex, you might want to put it there. Now, I'm going to just look at some of these so you can look at them. This one to me had a little bit too much text. Okay, here's a nice one. Okay, which has a nice little, I don't know if it's really a flow chart so much, but must relate to these perceptions, right, that people have. And so a couple stats, but easy, simple to understand. Okay. I suppose they stuck this Snoopy thing in the bottom to be a little funny. Okay. A lot of them take this kind of format where it's kind of more imagery. You know, this one just obviously a talk that compares these three areas. Okay. You would not understand it just from the slide. Okay. But it is kind of memorable with the imagery. I mean, it's really nice use of color and imagery. Not a bad way to go. Okay. I think I'll do one more here, but you can take a look at a bunch of these slides. If you just Google that, 3MT winning slides, okay, you can see a ton of these on there as well. This one actually is really nice, simple to read. Now you kind of go, oh, look at the chemical names. Oh, that's kind of scary, but maybe not. I mean, some things you just can't get away with calling them anything else, okay? If there was a metaphorical way to do it, great, okay? But it's simple enough, which this flow chart can see what you're going on. So you can almost tell this person's going to be talking about the problem, the approach and findings, and kind of the discovery over here, okay? But don't think you have to have something for every part of your talk. You just don't, okay? Let's see, but I'll have you have a chance to look at that a little more. Let's see. Ah, sorry, don't want to do that. Always lose my slide here. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's back. Any questions about the slide? Okay, so with 3MTs, here's the most common mistakes that are made. One, students sometimes fail to connect their research to the big picture, right? And the audience can't really see the importance of that unless you do connect it to the big picture. The student did not work hard enough to engage the audience curiosity about her work. Okay, so really when you have those hooks and describe your problem, that is really important to really get their attention. Let's see, the student neglected the visual component of the presentation. Remember, it is a definite component. So you do want something in there. Even if you think, well, I don't really need it, then design your slide with just that one photograph or whatever that totally relates to the idea that you're presenting, okay, and go with that. But you may not need any words at all. A lot of slides are like that as well. The student didn't leave enough room to practice a presentation. Once again, yeah, we all know about procrastination and the problems it causes. But this one can sneak up on you. And once again, just because it's 3 minutes, waiting till last minute to do that is really scary. And you can imagine, and it's happened, where people get up to do their talk and freeze, right? And of course, doing that in front of an audience is never, right, much fun. Okay, so you don't want that to happen. Get this down where it's nothing more than like singing a song, but you're not allowed to sing. Okay. The student fails to demonstrate their enthusiasm for the topic. And once again, it's really important to show your passion for what you're doing. Because if you're excited, the audience is excited, the judges are excited, right? And they will like it more. Okay, I would say if there's a secret ingredient to the winning talks, it's actually having presence. And what exactly is that? Well, here's kind of the ingredients of presence. So speak with an awareness of how your audience is responding. Okay, so be aware of your audience, right? So if they're excited, you should reflect that too. If they were concerned about something, right? You should be, I suppose, somewhat concerned as well. Okay, but notice how they're responding. Use body language consistent with your presentational goals. So move with authority and purpose. You don't have to stay exactly in one place. Okay. I think a really kind of neat strategy, and some people kind of use it to remember their talks more, is to kind of go, well, I'm going to start one place when I do my hook. I might move when I do my problem. I'll move over when somewhere else where I'm going to do my methodology, and then another place where you're going to result. So you can actually move around. You can use your arms. You can use your hands, right? So the use of hand gestures is really important. And notice that in this last talk I'm going to show you as well. Maximize your expressiveness when you talk, right? But one thing you don't want to come off is monotone or very quiet, right? So this is the time to speak up slowly and deeply, right? Make sure you know how to breathe through all this. You don't have to scream or anything like that, okay? I've seen someone that actually kind of did that, okay? At one of the regionals, just kind of scared everybody half to death when the person just came out so loud. But it did get our attention. It was kind of a part of a hook, I suppose. Develop the content of your speech so that it will lead your audience to respond the way you would like them to do, which once again is really kind of an art form. But once again, if they can read your emotion underneath your speech and kind of when you're getting excited. That's why I say when you get to that discovery, right, it's really almost peaking there where with your excitement and so on. And you'll lead your audience to kind of respond the same way. And like I said, if you're excited about something, they're going to be excited. Be comfortable with being in the spotlight, right? And that's part of what this is. A lot of people don't like giving public talks, but it's part of what you're trying to do if you hope to finish graduate education, go to work. If you're going to university, right, you are going to be in the spotlight, hopefully a lot, especially if you have a career in research. Then finally, and I wasn't sure where to stick this, so I put it here, okay? Just to make the point that, yeah, when you're giving the talk, please dress for success. I think your talk may come off a little light. You're not sure who the judges will be. You don't want to underdress for the occasion. So if you had to do a big conference talk, what would you wear? I think pretty much should guide you on what you're doing here. Okay. So presence would include, right, being passionate, being comfortable, confident, enthusiastic, authentic, right, and captivating all at the same time. Gee, that was easy to say, but not so easy to do. I think to get to that level of almost art form, you have to know your talk really, really well. And once again, the importance of really rehearsing a lot and having it down. Okay, so just an example of presence. I want to show you this last talk, which is Rosanna Stevens, Australian. And she has the most interesting slide because she has nothing on her slide. It's just a blank white slide, but it's there for a purpose. So let's take a look at this.
I introduce you to the stage Rosanna Stevens from the ANU College of Arts and Social Sciences. And the title of Rosanna's talk tonight is Now You See It.
It might seem as though I've started speaking with a blank PowerPoint slide behind me, but there are actually a bunch of things on this slide. You just can't see them yet. To your right is a Ferrari I drew myself in white. To your left is a soy latte in a white takeaway cup. And in the middle is a home, I drew myself in white, a home among the gum trees. Lots of plum trees, clothesline out back, veranda out front, and an old rocking chair. It's interesting how you can't see things when the context they're surrounded by makes them seen and visible. Suddenly this slide full of nothing is full of white stuff. You just needed help to see it. Here's something else you can't see. This slide is actually a black slide with a white rectangle pasted over the top of it. Over 200 years ago, white people arrived and settled over the top of already established Aboriginal life. And colonisation happens today. The settled way we are encouraged to live, the ways we are encouraged to learn and consume, how often we are encouraged to watch, and the ways we think about and use nature are actually pretty white. People who fit into this society are taught to think of it as normal and awesome, but if you don't fit in, whiteness is very visible because it can be depressingly inescapable. Aboriginal and Black academics and activists are suggesting that one of the first steps toward creating a more equal and considerate society is for white people today to identify and understand the dominance of our culture. From there, we can challenge how, in modern Australia, one way of life smothers another. But it's difficult to challenge something if you've been taught not to see it. Is a job white? Is a house white? Is organic gluten-free food white? If I fall into the vortex of cat videos on YouTube and I'm wearing my pajamas, am I just procrastinating or am I white procrastinating? My research is about understanding what whiteness looks like collecting and analysing Aboriginal accounts of feeling unwelcome, ignored, and misunderstood in society. And from that material, I'm piecing together a picture of white Australia that we can begin to debate. My thesis is a novel. The plot is a secret, but this conversation needs to be communicated well beyond the walls of a university. My hope is that research in this field will point toward a more equal, considerate, and respectful Australia that is so much more than just white.
Okay, so hold on.
Parents and teachers have become increasingly concerned.
Stop there. Okay. Hard to jump around on this stuff. Okay. Get to where we were. There. Okay. So yeah, from that talk, I hope you see, her hand motions, right, are right in line with what she's trying to say. Of course, this one's not without criticism as well. If you were going to criticize this one, I would think you might think, well, I'm not sure I would have worn what she wore to talk, but I think this wasn't actually the 3MT competition. So I think she was probably wearing something different at the time. But yeah, her sense of presence almost outweighs probably, a huge description of actual data that was collected, which was kind of mysterious in that talk as well. Okay, and she might have been taking some points for, for doing those things. But yep, she won that competition, I think, pretty handily. But let's see. So good presentations, right, should engage the audience. Right? They should explicitly connect research to the real world. You got what I'm saying here. Okay? You should speak clearly and comprehensively, right? Remember, the audience doesn't speak your discipline's language, so no academic language. Choose your words wisely. Use active verbs, shorter words and sentences. Don't use jargons or acronyms, anything like this. Okay? Pace yourself to find your own rhythm. You'll find that when you get your script together, that when you actually do it for real without the script, okay, your talking actually really speeds up without your awareness. So you almost have to consciously slow that talking speed down. Okay. Finally, probably most importantly, make sure you practice that material and delivery often. The more familiar you are with your script and your topic, right, it'll go a long way to making that presentation flow more naturally and easily when you deliver that. Okay. But yeah, by the time you get up there on stage to do this, you really are kind of excited. It's fun. It's kind of like getting up there and performing, at this level. Because really, it's kind of like singing, a song or something. So once again, if you need visuals for good presentations, just check out the 3MT winner sites. Obviously, if you just put 3MT, you're probably going to be directed to this 3MT thesis org 3-minute 3-minute thesis showcase, which is the one from Australia. You can also make sure you're putting in different universities because you'll get a chance to see, I think, winners from different universities. So if you want to see what US competition looks like, there you go. Now, the winner of all this will get a chance to go to the regional competition if they're holding it. Okay, and that competition, you're going to be going against really everyone in kind of the southern United States, at least towards the east and so on. So you have the North Carolina, South Carolina, you got Tennessee people there, Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi, right? And all the Texas schools. Okay, so there's a lot and there are people there from all the big universities. It's one of those times where everybody is on an even playing field in this competition, which is really kind of cool. All right. So, in just concluding, do not procrastinate this thing. Start preparing today. Even if you haven't collected data and you're going to do this, maybe not this year, but the following year, right? It's not too late to start preparing these talks and thinking about how you're going to do it. But practice, practice, practice. So once you have that script together, go through it a lot, and good luck. Any questions?
So the panel of judges that is external, right? Or is it university faculty that judge you on your performance?
Well, I haven't seen the judge panel yet, but typically what we do is we get people from the community. Okay, and we get one person from the university. Okay, but typically we have 3 judges, so it's really 2 community folks and 1 person from the university. Depending on the year, we might end up doing something where all of them might be from the university if it was a matter of convenience. Okay, but I'm not sure who our judges are yet. I think Dr. McCaleb has some ideas though.
Okay, and I assume that since it's so short, after the presentation, there's no questions asked, right?
That is true. Okay, these are really just you perform that talk. There's applause. The judges will have probably no more than 2 minutes to finish up what they're doing, and then the next person goes.
Okay, and I was just looking at all my data I have collected while you were speaking right now. So progressive data or partial findings are okay to be presented, right?
It is okay. Talk with your mentor.
Okay.
And just your mentor almost has to sign off on this in terms of your application. Are they okay with you presenting this with the data that you have? Is it enough to make some rough conclusions? And in your talk you can admit that you're still finishing up data. But by the time, if you happen to win with that, of course, go to regionals, we would hope you have all your data collected for that one.
Okay. And the slides I was seeing, it's just a single PowerPoint slide, right? A standard PowerPoint slide?
It is. Like I said, I encourage you because there's so much variety in these. It's going to be a PowerPoint slide, but we will want you to probably download it as a PDF, even though it's a PowerPoint slide. Because formatting that for us, things happen, depending on whether you did it on a Mac or a PC, that sometimes they don't look the same. But if you do a PDF of that, those won't mess up ever.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to listen to see what this thing was all about, and I hope to see you up on stage soon.
Real fast, everyone, before you head out, I just wanted to, I'm going to post our website in the chat, and someone asked if this presentation was going to be available. Yes, I'll probably have it uploaded tomorrow, so if you want to go back and review anything that Dr. Seidel said, we'll make sure it's up and available to you. Also, on this website, you'll find all of our dates and deadlines for the 3MT competition. So for the first time, I think we're going to do the video submission. So if you record yourself, presenting your 3MT, you can submit it to us by the 8th of March. and we'll make sure that you have some feedback on that before the final competition. So that's something that you're interested in. That's what we're offering this year. So I think that's new, if I'm not mistaken. But this might be a
Yeah,
good
I haven't
chance.
done that one before. So.
Yeah, so this would be a good chance if you're not 100% confident yet. You can submit a video to us, and then we can we'll have a panel of experts review the video and give you some feedback on that. So feedback would be returned on March 28th. And then you can see some of our other deadlines for the competition. But that's something I wanted to point out as a new option that we have.
Yeah, definitely involve your mentor in all of this. I think they take pride in you coming up, presenting this very well. And there's also lots of faculty around campus that you may want to consult with. Some in the theater department, in fact, but in the communication department as well. I know I've talked to several people there that are more than willing to help people with public speaking if you want the help.
Absolutely. Are there any final questions before we close up for the day?
I asked you a question in the chat. If we have any questions in the future, do we email you or Grow?
You can email me directly, and if I don't have the answer, I'll find it for you. So yeah, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat again just so you have it. But I check both. So if you email Grow, I'll see it, or if you email me, I'll see it as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Alrighty. Well,
Okay.
awesome. Well, thank y'all so much for coming, and I'll have this video up on our website tomorrow, probably.
And Sophia?
Yes.
Thank you.
If you want me to go through, I can actually do it again, not on WebEx, so I don't have all those little mistakes in between finding things. But if you think it works fine, we'll just go with that.
I think it was great, but if you did want to do it again,